Take a look behind the curtain with a real whistleblower and American patriot. Prepare to embrace the uncomfortable truth because this program has no time for comforting lies. Here is civil liberties enthusiast, Second Amendment defender, and recovering FBI agent Kyle Seraphin.
Hello, my friends. Good morning and welcome to the Kyle Seraphin Show. Today is Monday. It is September the 15th, halfway through this month, which has already been a year long. Just a crazy last week or two. And we're going to have to talk about a bunch of sort of nasty topics, but I think that I had some clarity over the weekend. I put the phone down, I put it in the bag. I went to church. Actually, my whole family has been kind of sick, so I went to church by myself. And I was able to do two things. Number one, I had my head on a swivel like many of you probably do. I saw a couple of things that made me just hone in. It took me out of the moment. There was a guy there dressed in all black who was wearing a backpack. Maybe he had a med kit or something and he thought he was being helpful. But when you wear a COVID mask in 2025, that's all black and the black clothing and a black sling bag and all that stuff, you're certainly going to get my attention. So I ended up kind of focused on this guy. But while I was sitting there listening to the sermon, which actually was decidedly on topic, and that's not always the case. If you guys go to Catholic Mass, a lot of times it feels like you're getting canned garbage, and that was not the case today. Chinese-born priest just laying it out there that we have a real difficult task of accepting the things in front of us, that children can be shot. How many people have already forgotten that happened in Minneapolis only 2 weeks ago, that you can have political figures shot for having discourse. And it occurred to me as I'm sitting there listening that the answer, you keep hearing the word war and civil war, but I don't think that's really the concept that Americans are getting towards. And when I went home, I got a text message from a good friend of mine who said for the first time in 20 years, he went to church. And it occurred to me that we are facing a moment of crusade, not of war to gain territory or property, but a cultural crusade, which, if we recall what the Crusades were about, at least nominally, right? They were about political power and influence and the ability of the church to send men off to battle and all this kind of thing that happened in Europe. But it was an attempt to, quote unquote, reconquer the Holy Lands. And that there was a purpose that was they believed was ordained by God. And so it doesn't matter if you use the word revival, like I see folks in the chat using, or whether you use the word holy war, or whether you talk about recapturing. The West needs to recapture its moral high ground, and we've ceded it. One of the things that my buddy and I were discussing over the weekend came down to this huge shift in this country, that in the 60s and 70s, you could abandon your children to public schooling. Maybe they went to parochial schools, maybe they went to a private school, but odds are you could leave them in school for 8 hours a day. And I don't think this was the norm, but you could have a mom that was self-interested and was interested in doing whatever her own things were, and dad could spend 90% of his time on the road traveling for work. And the kids would still mostly come out okay, because we had an expectation that there was a common system of values, that there was a common morality in the United States, that Western values were pervasive. And if you go back and look at the numbers, by household, about 90% or more than 90% of households in 1970 USA were at least nominally Christian. So they shared these values. And if you look at the numbers today, it's about 60. So when a third of the population has turned away from, you don't even have to say God. You simply have to say when a third of the population has turned away from accepting a common system of values and morality, then anything is fair game. And it doesn't take a lot of the population to be radicalized for us to really find ourselves in a bad situation, because most people tend to just listen and see what goes around and stay out of the fray. Most of us are interested in trying to raise our own kids and trying to make a living and make sure that your household functions. And we don't have the ability to go out there and look at the broader culture and say, hey, how do we recapture this damn thing that has gotten away from us? So this concept of crusade, and maybe even today's thumbnail, I think it's required, not just for the American experiment, which is obviously on the rocks at this exact moment. We feel it. There's a tide turning, and you can call it Charlie's Crusade if you like. But there's a Western crusade that has to happen, where Western civilization has ceded so much territory passively that there is no other choice, that the action has to be revolutionary. And so we're going to talk today about what happened in Utah a little bit more. Also, what it is unveiled about the weakness of our federal law enforcement system. It actually has brought out the worst in some people that we would otherwise like. It's also showed the weakness of people that we don't necessarily like. And then lastly, I think what it says about Europe, because there was a massive rally, and the numbers are contested right now. Another friend of mine, we're talking about whether or not it was 100,000 people or 1 million plus people that gathered in London. But there was a huge gathering in the UK to indicate that there is a problem. And the fact the news media even wants to contest the numbers and say that it was not enough people or that the numbers are falsified, all of that leads me to believe that they are probably closer to the 1 million number or more than the 100,000 number that the left wants to maintain. And they demonized Elon Musk for speaking, even doing so remotely. And so there's calls to censor him and to sanction him and to bring financial penalties against his companies and so on. This is a really global topic. If not global, it's at least like a hemisphere topic where those of us in the West really need to take a moment and figure out what we're talking about. So we're going to get into all that. First, this is just as good a time as any to remind you that this is the National Preparedness Month. Our folks over at My Patriot Supply have a deal going on right now. If you want to see the deal, just simply go to mypatriotsupply.com/KYLE. Again, mypatriotsupply.com/Kyle. You'll see all of the stuff on there. There's a video on how to use this stuff. But it's a great time to ask yourself what your preparedness level looks like. Look, you cannot push back against things unless you know that you're going to be safe and that your family has what they need to move forward. Do you have enough food? How long will it last you if an emergency were to happen around you? Let's say there was civil unrest. What would you do about it? What if the taps went dry and you no longer had clean water coming out of the faucet? What do you do about that? What do you do about a storm knocking out power or someone attacking the power grid, which we keep being told white supremacists are going to do? I think it's likely to be someone else. If there's any room for improvement on your end, it's worth looking at. I have most of these items right now. We can all do better, but I'm telling you that if you're not thinking about this, you are well behind the curve. We already learned this in 2020. So check out the folks over at My Patriot Supply. Go look at mypatriotsupply.com/KYLE. Right now, they're offering a deal that includes $1,500 in free emergency food and preparedness gear, free on top of this mega kit that they've got going on. It's called the Preparedness Month Mega Kit. It's huge. It's a ton of stuff. It's a year of food. It's got water filtration to purify. It's got solar backup power, all kinds of things. Most of the stuff that we've picked up piecemeal here, you can do in one fell swoop. So check them out. Again, mypatriotsupply.com/KYLE. Get the full details. There is a link below in the show description if you are watching or listening anywhere. And let's get into today's program and try to get a little bit, I think it might be a little bit heavy, but I think it's worth talking about. So we're gonna cover something first that may not be the most obvious piece of this. But if you're gonna conquer, and we're gonna talk about crusades, if we're gonna talk about retaking territory and property, if we're gonna talk about retaking the moral ground and the culture, let's talk about some of the people that have taken some of that space up. And a lot of it comes down to money and convenience, and it's always been this way. Look at this. This is a story from CBS News this morning. Major U.S. comedians are set to perform in Saudi Arabia, and they're urged not to help cover up for the quote-unquote abuses of a repressive regime. And yet, there will be something called the Riyadh Comedy Festival that is going to go between September 26th and October 9th, just a few weeks away. Some of the biggest names in American comedy have signed up to perform at this festival in Saudi Arabia. They're being urged by people on the left to speak out about the country's human rights abuses. It's pretty interesting because these same people will fall all over themselves to explain why Muslims need to be in this country, why they need to come from Muslim majority countries and bring their own values, and why they don't need to assimilate into a predominantly Christian country like America. Isn't it funny? You should speak out about it over there if you go and visit them on their territory, but not when you come here. When you come here, you can just keep your culture, even if we don't generally agree with it here in the West. Saudi Arabia is going to host the Riyadh Comedy Festival. Some of the biggest names in North American comic look like they're going to be people like Dave Chappelle, Kevin Hart, Bill Burr. I've got the lineup sitting right here. Whitney Cummings, Some of these folks I don't recognize. Aziz Ansari is going to be there. Gabriel Iglesias on October the 1st. Chris Tucker. Let's see who else we recognize. Jimmy Carr. Tom Segura. Sebastian Maniscalco. Bill Burr. Andrew Schultz. Who else? Hannibal Buress. They don't have him listed on here. Oh, there you go. Jim Jeffries, Jim Gaffigan, Louis C.K. Big names. Pete Davidson. Tim Dillon's supposed to be there as well. There was some pushback by folks about Tim Dillon going. And I got a message. A couple of you sent me over something and said, Tim Dillon's dropping the ultimate truth on what's going on in Utah right now and in this investigation. Huh. Is that so? He's dropping the ultimate truth? How many of you guys know anything about these comedians or the people that you watch on a podcast? How many of you actually even look into their background? And it's not taken away from some of the stuff because I've played some of his clips here and some of the things he has to say are very salient observations. But it's quite interesting that moving to a comedian, and comedians tend to be very astute observers of the world. Nobody could say that I don't love stand-up comedy and it's not a reference point in most of my life. My wife and I used to sit and watch stand-up almost every night. We'd go watch a different special. But if your version of conservative news comes from a man who came out as gay at 25 years old, who's from New York, who basically doesn't understand what conservatism is because he's not conservative, and he lived in New York and he lives in Los Angeles and he also partly lived in Austin for a little bit, it's pretty interesting that that's the thing that is slanted your views. I think we're often willing to give credit to people who say things that we like, that we want to believe. And I see a ton of that over the weekend. It's the reason why I had to get off social media for the weekend. I couldn't handle it anymore because the confirmation bias of somebody said something and I like what it is, don't confuse me with the facts, simply let me reaffirm my own opinion. And so you have folks out there that are making arguments that are completely absurd, completely insane, that members of the security detail from Charlie Kirk's team, people who are Christian apologists that have been his friend for decades, people that have spent, thousands of hours around him were the people responsible because they touched their hats or they rubbed their nose from one angle and you think that they were given signals to steal third base. And these include people that I like saying just the most absurd and dumb things. If you guys don't know who it is you're listening to, and if you don't know what position they're in, this is really simple. I'm going to give it to you one more time. When law enforcement looks at a source of information, there's a couple things that they want to evaluate. Is this person in the position? Do they have placement enough to know what they're talking about? And do they have access to that information? Access and placement are the things that we analyze. Without those things, it's like, how do you know this? Well, somebody told me. Well, who's the somebody? Well, I can't really tell you. Done. Not interested. We're in a place where people are so quick to assume that because it agrees with my underlying sentiment, that I believe that there needs to be a conspiracy, that I'm willing to connect dots that are so outside of a linear path from this is what happened and this is why it happened. There's very simple explanations. And then we cheer on when our preferred answer is announced. Some people were cheering on the fact that it was unveiled over the weekend that the shooters or the alleged shooters' boyfriend is transitioning to be a female, whatever the hell that's supposed to mean. Again, insane. The guy looks like a guy and he has like furry costumes and stuff like that. There is such a quick rush to say, because all of these institutions have fundamentally cut out their own credibility to me. And that is the news media. That is our political structure. That is our law enforcement agencies. They've all worked against their own credibility. So now people just go, whatever I want to believe is true. And I'll justify it no matter how many Fruit Loops I have to go and swirl around to get there. It's pretty wild. This is not a totally unique time in American history. So it's worth knowing that there is history behind this. It's a story on CBS as well from a guy named John Meacham. He won a Pulitzer Prize talking about the soul of America, the battle for our better angels. Went on some of the weekend programs and was talking about this, saying that this is his statement. He said, I think we're in a dangerous place. There's never been a once upon a time in American history, and you're never going to be happily ever after. There are moments that you and I could agree that we'd like to see replicated, and this obviously is not one of them. Political violence erupts in America when there is an existential question: who is an American? That's the existential question. This is the question that was being asked and partially answered during the lead up to the November election in 2024. Who deserves to be included in we the people, or all men are created equal, he said. And when that's in tension and we don't have common ground or agreement, then we look at what happens historically and violence erupts. And that's what we saw on Wednesday, but that's what we saw a week prior to that in Minneapolis as well. Utah, Minneapolis. We've been seeing this happen intermittently. It's what we saw in July of 2024 in Butler, PA. Who deserves to be an American? What does an American mean? What does it mean to be there? And historically, what it meant is that you actually assimilated to this country. You remember, I grew up in the same place that you guys did, hearing about the words melting pot. What we didn't hear is that it was the American stew, right? It was supposed to be more like fondue. A bunch of chunks, different flavors of cheese, different styles, different cultures. They come together, they melt down. We keep whatever sort of stays around. It adds a little bit of flavor to the dish, but the dish fundamentally just takes you in and is absorbing you. Not we chop up a bunch of carrots and we throw a bunch of chunky things. So now we have this like weird Muslim community in the middle of Texas that wants to go after and use Sharia law, even though it's antithetical to American liberty. We don't do that. And less are we seeing that homogeneity where we've just added you to the existing flavor. What we're seeing now is we're adding a new chunk to the pot. And if you do not assimilate, and there's been many people that have made the same point, without assimilation, immigration is actually invasion. And once something comes in and sweeps in, and this happened historically throughout different places in Europe, and the pushback was, in fact, things like crusades. There were attempts to regain footing, to recapture. I think that's where we're at right now, where we have to recapture. I'm going to give you an example of what has been pushed in, because the predominant culture of America for most of American history, it has been less or more Christian, but the values have been consistent. Buddy and I are talking about whether or not America was a truly religious nation at its founding. And I think the answer is probably not, which is why many of the people that are founders and signed on to the Constitution, signed on to the Declaration of Independence, breaking away from England, they were deists. They had the same basic values as you and I do today. But what they didn't have was necessarily religious fervor, which is what you're seeing spark up today. When a friend of mine, who is exactly the kind of person, you all have a friend like this, and maybe you are that friend in your group. You're raised with a certain faith tradition, get a little bit older, it's less important to you, it's less interesting to you, you've got other things to do, and so you go out there and pursue that, and you forget that there was a Sunday tradition, that there was something that you did with your family. And maybe you forget because it's not all that relevant. I'll tell you a good thing. When anybody goes to basic training, and all of you military veterans know that what I'm talking about, you go to basic training, the first thing that you do is you decide which Sunday service you're going to go to, because it is a moment of peace in an otherwise storm that is disruptive to your life. It's the one continuity that you can kind of hold on to and go like, okay, my whole life is upside down. There are people screaming at me all the time. They're telling me when to eat. They're telling me when to sleep. They're telling me when I can stand up or sit down or turn around, or which way to walk, or which pivot I'm supposed to do, what I'm supposed to carry, how I'm supposed to dress. I get screamed at for having a button out of line, or that I've got a string on my uniform. And the one moment of peace you would have would be to go back to church. And most people can remember that, also touching back to a time when they were younger, and they go like, got it. Okay, continuity. We need that thread to hold on to. If you're in the dark, if you're in a blizzard, how many of you have seen a movie where they show a blizzard from 200 years ago? And what did people do? They ran a rope to the outhouse. They ran a rope to where the cattle were. They put their hand on the rope. That ends up being the thing we reach for when we realize that we're completely in a place where we can't see what's going on. And so you do it in the military when you experience that chaos. Right now, our nation is experiencing chaos and upheaval. And I think more people are going to reach down and I'm going to find that rope that I had when I was a child. That continuity, that thread through. For the last, let's call it 6 weeks at the church that I've been going to. And a big chunk of it is because they have a school. So children have something to do with this. And having children has something to do with it. But we've had standing room only in a church that people told me not 10 years ago, was dying and dead, that the Catholic Church was over. And many of you were finding that, yeah, you might have a small gathering. How many of you have standing room only in a room that holds 500 people? And they've packed in another 100 up on the choir loft and another 50 to 60 sitting in just the vestibule or in the narthex or the atrium, and another 40 or 50 sprung out along the wings. If any of you are Catholic and listen to this, you'll know exactly how weird this is. Our priest on Sunday said that they are introducing a second mass that's going to run concurrent to the first mass. Mass starts at 9:30, the one that we've been going to. At 9:40, they're going to open up another mass that will hold as many as 200 people in another room. And they had to get special dispensation for that. They have so much overflow that they're going to run a secondary mass to be able to try to handle the crowd. That's revival. That is unprecedented. This is a pilot program they're running to figure out what in the world they're going to need to do. They need to add more to the schedule. If you're going to a church of any kind, Christian denomination of whatever flavor, and it is not saying things that are hard to understand and that will result in people deliberately pushing back, then you might not be hearing the right message. And I think that's what I keep seeing. When I go to churches that look like they're dead, they are not preaching the actual gospel. They are not preaching the difficulty of the path. And when you hear people say, listen, no, it's hard, but this is what we're going to do. We're going to grab a hold of this lifeline and we're going to walk into the unknown and the dangerous. We're going to walk into the blizzard. We're going to get there because we have this guiding rope and it's a straight line, but it's going to be awful all along the way. When I hear those messages, that it was a hard path, that's when people start listening. And I think people are realizing right now, the soft and the squishy, the same sort of thing that people were rejecting in the late 90s and began to grab again in the early 2000s after 9/11 and lost their way again after 15 or 20 years. This is the constant story of God's church on earth, but it's also the story of humanity. It doesn't matter whether you're a faith person or not. You can read the Bible as history and see that when mankind and when civilization loses its way, it always gets difficult, and then they always have to turn back. And this might be part of that course correction. Again, a reconquering would be the way to look at it. And what are we reconquering from? We're reconquering from institutions that seem like they do not care about facts or reality. They are simply pushing forward ideology that has no basis underneath it. I saw a debate with Ben Shapiro, or a little exchange between Ben Shapiro and Bill Maher. Bill Maher being sort of your classic old school liberal, if you will. We start seeing them as pretty reasonable, even though we would have viciously pushed back previously. And he's talking with Ben Shapiro about morality and how the Bible is full of things that are nonsensical and why I don't believe it. And Ben Shapiro says, we agree probably on 80% of what morality looks like. Why is that? You did not hit a triple. You were born on third base if you grew up in a Western culture. And we've ceded that territory to people that say things like this. And this is what is not acceptable. And this is what I think that the crusade will be against.
We have to start calling his supporters racist as well. That MAGA symbol has come to represent something. It is the new Nazi symbol. It is the new hood.
Because they're not a party, right? They're Sinn Féin to the IRA. They're the PLO to Hamas. They're a dime store front for a terrorist movement.
The Republican Party is basically a domestic terrorist cell at this point, and they should be treated as such.
There are elements of the GOP that are starting to look like the jihadists.
Not a political party. They're a white nationalist movement. They're a fascist threat to our nation. That's not hyperbolic. That's academic.
Would have once seemed hyperbolic, but it increasingly does feel like the Republican Party has become a death cult, and it's all about Donald Trump.
There is no alternative right now because the Republican Party project today is a fascist authoritarian project.
Fact is, Republicans in Congress are still in the grip of the ultra-MAGA agenda.
Party of dupes, party of knuckleheads, party of weirdos, party of freaks. So that is a simple message. And underneath that, it's the party of nothing.
It has become an authoritarian embracing cult. It is fascist.
We take an oath to protect and defend the Constitution from all enemies, foreign and domestic. And sadly, the domestic enemies to our voting system and our honoring our Constitution are right at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue with their allies in the Congress of the United States.
Trump's modern-day Gestapo is scooping folks up off the streets. They're in unmarked vans, wearing masks, being shipped off to foreign torture dungeons. No chance to mount a defense, not even a chance to kiss a loved one goodbye, just grabbed up by masked agents, shoved into those vans, and
The old films of the Gestapo grabbing people off the streets of Poland, and you compare them to those nondescript thugs who grabbed that student, that graduated student. It does look like a Gestapo operation. You know, my dad served in the Second World War. He fought the Nazis in Northern Africa. He fought the Nazis on the Italian peninsula. And I think he's looking down right now and he's happy that I'm fighting today's Nazis.
You really think that? I think your dad probably is disappointed in what a ridiculous person you are. It's wild. There's this concept that I see when people want to grab valor that is not theirs. My father was a this. My grandfather fought in this. I'm a daughter of the American Civil War. This concept of family valor also, like family valor. I have valor. I have moral authority because someone I know did something one time that wasn't me. And I'm going to co-opt all that crap to me. They are talking about weapons. They are talking about war. They are othering in a way that we've been talking about on this podcast for a couple years now. To make somebody less than human means that they are an appropriate enemy, and this has been done as a psychological operation in all wars. You always want to make sure that people do not see the common humanity in the adversary. You want to make sure that they look at them and see them as subhuman, other than human, less than human. Take your pick. They think that they have a moral high ground. And they've also, if nothing else, they've had progress on their side because they have taken things back. America loves an underdog. And for a very long time, the left, the sort of communist left, the socialist, the Marxist, put any sort of ideology that you want to like overlay on the top of it. All of it is just the anti-American version, the anti-Western, the anti-Christian version of it. All of those things where I say that your work is mine because what? Because I want it? Because I'm going to push, I'm going to come after your empathy. I'm going to come after your compassion, and I'm going to weaponize it against you. America's job, the experiment that we created here, is really, really unusual in all of human history because we believe in a majority rules, but the minority is protected to be a dissident group and not quashed. And that's an incredibly delicate balance. It has to be done with a culture of people that basically agree that both sides are in good faith, that both sides have the same values. And then we can disagree with how we spend our money or how we implement governmental rule, what rules, what laws need to be in place, which things can be culturally enforced, all of this kind of stuff. They are talking about actual weapons. They are all, whether it's hyperbole or whether it's rhetoric or otherwise, it continues to exist. I'm going to show you one thing. This is one of the same women from the political commentary piece, and also Jasmine Crockett talking. And then I'm going to give you a very sane reason from someone who's fought in actual wars with actual weapons that actually can see this change happening. One of my kind of favorite observers, Nick Frieda. So first, Jasmine Crockett, I'll subject you to that, and then second, we'll give you analysis on it.
But this is a war. This isn't a battle, and we absolutely will win this war.
It is a war. It is indeed a war. And I have to say, they have won some battles, Jasmine, but we have to keep our eye on the war, and everybody needs to pick up a weapon and get involved because this is for the safety and lasting of the country.
It has to be for the safety and the lasting of the country. We all need to pick up a weapon. What if we could break down what that actually has meant? Because there's been an evolution of language, and language eventually evolved into action. This is what I think is going on. I think this hits the nail on the head. Many of you will already have this, but you won't have it in such a coherent and succinct manner.
So I noticed something a couple of years back, and that was that the terminology that the left was using in debates had shifted a little bit. We were all used to them calling us racist or sexist whenever we disagreed, and we all knew that was a way of shutting down debate, right? Because after all, if you're a racist or a sexist, why should I listen to anything that you say? But then it shifted. They started claiming that any sort of disagreement with them was a form of violence. If you disagreed with trans ideology, then you were engaging in trans genocide, and that was different. And I started to posit this theory a couple of years back where I said, you know what, I don't think they're trying to shut down debate the way they used to. I think they're trying to come up with a moral framework whereby they can engage in aggressive violence toward you and claim that it's merely self-defense. So what do you think now?
Isn't that interesting? The language change we saw, but the reason to build your own moral framework up. Every organization that's ever decided to levy war or that has decided to fight against another has to frame themselves as the good guy in their own mind. And we've had discussions about that on this podcast previously, that the people who do the most evil, they don't think that what they're doing is evil. What they think is that they're actually doing something that's morally good. In fact, it is demanded of them. And so they have to frame the argument in such a way. Silence is violence. Speech is violence. The answer to violence is violence. I've now made them one-to-one comparators, even though that we don't believe that's the case. So if someone says something I don't like, violence against them is justifiable if you believe in that sort of nonsense. And the only way you can do that is if you take two things that are not equal and you start pushing out and repeating it over and over again that, in fact, it is equal. Rockstar commentary. You guys are seeing this too. It's the thought that many of us felt, but maybe didn't articulate. I think that is the advantage of some of the media that we have. That we can have something that allows someone else to crystallize the thoughts that we feel are accurate, but we may not arrive at the exact same word. And we have this constant ability to parallel construct, to steal one of the FBI things, where we all are constructing information and argument at the same time. That's the only value that I see in the social media context. I don't see a lot of value there. Fast dissemination of information, yes. Fast dissemination of misinformation and disinformation and bad information, yes. Crystallizing arguments so that people can realize that they're not alone. That's the value. That's the entirety of it. The governor of Utah in this moment is saying something that is true, and yet I don't know how you put this genie back in the bottle. Unless you can start reconquering culture, you're not going to stop the technology that's already out. People have made the argument for several years now that the internet and social media and the way that it is and the way that we disseminate information is a digital dark age. But it's backwards from the regular dark ages. When we look back at the dark ages, what you saw was that there was a high point in society where technologies were created, where certain types of methods of, let's say, delivering water, aqueducts, or buildings were constructed, or philosophical ideas and logic and reason and education were created. And then those things went out of vogue and the people who knew how to do them stopped. And so we looked around and we said, well, we have this stuff and we like this stuff, but we don't know how to maintain or how to create it independently. We have to just sort of hope it keeps working. We're backwards right now with technology. We have sort of the Ian Malcolm from Jurassic Park moment, where we've spent so much time trying to figure out, if we could, we failed to determine whether or not we should do a lot of the things that we do. So the information dark age is backwards from the dark ages that we saw in Europe. We've created things and we don't know how they actually apply to human existence and condition and make things work. We have the technology, but we don't know how to integrate it into human happiness and its existence. It turns out when you've corrupted the underlying sort of culture behind it, that's where you have real problems. I don't think Governor Cox is wrong about this. I also don't think Governor Cox is like a hero of the Republic per se. I've seen the pronouns like you guys have. I've seen him fight some things that are not good battles for a conservative person to fight. So he's a politician. That's fine. But occasionally, having someone say the right things in the right way at the right time, it actually is pretty helpful. You need momentary, proper leadership in very acute circumstances. That doesn't mean this person should run America. This doesn't mean this guy should run for president. It just means at this moment he was tapped and he stepped up and he said the things that needed to be said properly and he's making observations. And then I will probably also forget about who he is in a couple of weeks, just like many of you will, because he won't be relevant to the national news story. He'll go back to being just the governor of Utah that nobody listens to. But he's not wrong about this concept that our interactions are cancerous.
This is not good for us. It is not good to consume. Social media is a cancer. on our society right now.
It's a cancer. So what about all the rest of this nonsense too? Because I've seen people in our chat this morning already. Oh, how did the rifle get to the roof? We covered that last week. Go watch it. Go watch one of the interviews I did. I did a really good one with Redacted. I did one with Chase Geiser over on InfoWars as well. I think it cleanly and clearly states what is the straightest line. And by the way, the official story is not ridiculous. It's not. It's not crazy. It's not wild or insane. This is wild and insane. This is irresponsible. Let me play a couple of FBI people. Actually, before we do that, let me just plug my friends over at Patriot Coolers while we're sitting here. You guys are probably not seeing me drinking off camera, but I'm drinking from my 19-ounce coffee mug. This is the one that has the handle. You don't actually know you need a handle on your coffee mug until you have one on, and you realize how convenient it is. If you guys are looking to upgrade your current, whatever it is, thermos cup or so on, you want one that fits in a cup holder, check out my friends at Patriot Coolers. You can get it engraved. You can get it looking like this one behind me over there. Lean back. There it is. You can get the Suspendables flag on it. You can get the Suspendables badge on it. You can get your own company logo. You can get something from, Thin Blue Line or Red Line or whatever it is you're interested in. You can get a nursing symbol. Check them out. PatriotCoolers.com. Promo code KYLE. Kyle saves you 10% if you guys type that in at checkout. They've been with us for a very long time. They make a great product. I use them every day, everywhere I go. When I'm out mowing the lawn, my daughters bring me out my 40-ounce cup and I drain the darn thing because I'm dehydrated. When I'm going on a road trip, I take one or more of them with me. They're always with us. They have water bottles and they have coffee mugs and they have big smoothie cups or whatever else you're into. PatriotCoolers.com, promo code Kyle. They won't cancel you if you happen to have a different idea and you want to get that engraved on there. If you guys are looking for a big order or something like that, you need a discount, just shoot me an email, info@KyleSerafin.com. I will put you in touch with their folks over there and they will get you taken care of. Good folks. They do small or large orders. Take your pick. All right, let's do this video, which I think this is some of the most irresponsible nonsense. We've moved into a space where traditional media is now chasing social media. I watched my buddy Ryan Matta. Yeah, we love Ryan. Ryan doesn't know what he's talking about certain things. God love him. He for a long time tried to convince me to buy a crypto coin that's worth nothing right now. I would have lost all my money. He also has tried to convince me that the earth is flat. And he also tried to convince me during the weekend that somebody on the side had a cell phone shaped pistol and that's where the shot came from. There's so much bad information. And since social media, the cancer, is pushing that out, you're also seeing the feedback loop, which is that mainstream media is now trying to do the same thing. I played you guys this last week. Let's see how this aged. This is Stuart Kaplan. He's billed as a former FBI agent. In a world where Steve Friend exists, why would you ever interview this guy or Nicole Parker, who went on and cried? She just got on and just sobbed. Is that what the Fox News audience wants? The boomer audience that listens to Fox News? Do they just want to just tune in and see a 40-something-year-old woman just sob about someone she didn't even know because she's just an emotional wreck? Remember, the reason that Nikki Parker, aka FBI Barbie, we got another Barbie, we got Border Barbie on a little bit later. The reason why Nikki Parker even has a job at Fox is because she quit her job at the FBI because her friend got killed. Well, now somebody in media has been killed. Is she going to quit her job there too? Because it's just, I don't get it. I don't get it why you bring people like this on that say nonsense. And by the way, if you guys don't know how this works on the back end, when Fox News reaches out, when a producer for Jesse Waters reaches out to you and says, would you care to join our program tonight? And you'd say, okay, sure. Yeah, I'd be happy to. They go, can you give us some talking points? They don't say, we're going to talk about this. They say, will you give us some talking points? And you go, yes. Or they'll say, we'd like you to talk about this thing with this angle. They've come to me and said, would you go on and talk about how the FBI should be investigating Harvard professors for their speech and backing Palestine? And I go, no, I don't think the FBI should investigate anybody for speech. And they go, oh, okay, we'll go find somebody else to do that. That's how people like Stuart Kaplan end up on this thing. I don't know specifically what they asked him to be, but I can tell you the process, which I've gone through a dozen plus times with just Fox News alone. They always want to know, what angle are you going to take, and does it work with the angle that we're selling? Because we're selling a specific angle because we're Fox News. We're not interested in fair and balanced or truth or anything else. What we're interested in selling an interesting narrative. And I'm going to tell you why that gets interesting, because all of the news sources, left and right, have decided to hone in on Kash Patel as a very interesting and singular fail point in this whole experience. For those of you who have been listening to this program for a while, especially you that comment, oh, stop talking about Kash Patel. Listen, I read your comments and I don't care because I'm ahead of the curve on this, and I'm going to show you today how that's the case. There are at least a dozen stories on the Main Street outlets from both sides of the coin talking about it. The FBI is still full of people like this that are willing to say whatever it takes to maintain a job or relevancy.
I think this assassination, different than the assassinated attempt back in Butler, Pennsylvania, was a very well-planned, very well-orchestrated plot that was put in motion days before, and this individual had a plan of escape to elude detection of being up on a rooftop and also being able to evade and elude law enforcement after that shot was taken. When you take a look at what happened in Butler, Pennsylvania, Crooks came onto the venue, he left the venue, he came back, he was questioned. I mean, it was really an amateur scenario. This assassination of Charlie Kirk, to me, is indicative of a professional hit. And I'm not so sure that we are going to quickly be able to apprehend this individual without some luck, hopefully.
What do we mean by the word professional hit? By the way, Jesse Waters asked them too, and then he doesn't have a great answer. Professional hit. The word professional indicates something someone does for wages and does so to sustain themselves. You're telling me that this person, based on what they saw, does this for a living? Here's how I know that's not true. And here's how you know it's not true. I want you to think back in your mind, how many public figures have you seen, let's call it in the last 25 years, it's something that you're going to be a professional at, so you're going to have to be able to make a living. In the last 25 years, how many public figures have been shot to death from a distance greater than 100 yards? Feel free to put them in the comments, the number of people that you know that were killed professionally with a rifle at distance. I don't have one in my mind, so I'm looking for a couple. I don't know how many you have to do to kill to make you a professional where that sustains you for a living, even for a year. That was an absurd and moronic statement by this guy. Sounds good as long as you don't have any evidence. I see the chat starting to answer with none. Nobody can think of any because that's not how people get killed. Intelligence agencies don't kill you like that. They lure you into an embassy. They chop you up and put you into a barrel of acid. Somebody comes up and spits some powder in your face. Somebody comes up and has some stuff on their hands while they're wearing a glove. They shake your hand and you die because of a poisoning. Somebody gives you bad food and you fall ill. Somebody injects you with ricin and you have a heart attack instantaneously. There's a lot of reasons why this was not a professional hit. Not the least of which was he didn't actually get away without being seen. He was seen. We have the security camera footage of the guy. So for everybody that wants the conspiracy and wants to get deep into the weeds on this nonsense, that's the distraction. The reality is that there was an interaction. There was someone who was killed for speech in the same way that Nick Freitas was talking about. He was saying things that were not palatable to the other side, and they have been able to set this up to the point where they can justify violence behind it. We saw dozens of people fired over the weekend from their jobs because of their awful take on this. We talked about it on Friday, but a concept of assassination culture actually exists mostly on the hard political left, where surveys from April out of Rutgers University showed 55% of people who lean left of center, that's not all hard leftists, but left of center in general, those people, about 55% of them polled said that they would be okay with an assassination of Elon Musk and Donald Trump. That was palatable to them. Because words are violence, things I don't like result in violence, and then we decide to move on. And we're going to take action against it to protect ourselves from violence. They did this to Elon already. I'm going to make this argument right now.
Someone threw a Molotov cocktail at a Tesla service center. At least 5 Teslas blew up. When you pull out a chainsaw to celebrate firing thousands of people, they get mad. It's just
Let's send these techno-fascist, broligarchs, and old-fashioned Nazis a message loud and clear.
The vandalism really shows the outright anger and rage that people are feeling about what Elon Musk is doing.
We should all be protesting in the streets about this and be incredibly angry.
It has taken the American people
to go protest at Tesla to get the president's attention.
Try to dismantle the reputation of Tesla in hopes of hitting Elon Musk where it hurts.
He's incompetent. He's a thief. He's a Nazi.
Musk is a pathological liar. He's a criminal. He's a sociopath and a ghoul. He's literally killing people, but he should really enjoy taking this guy down.
And all I want to see happen on my birthday is for Elon to be taken down. Yes.
Elon Musk kind of turned out to be I don't want to be driving a car built and designed by.
If you drive a Tesla, please sell it. And if you own stock in Tesla, please dump it.
I've never wanted to buy a Tesla because I prefer to buy cars made by car companies, not computer companies.
I added Tesla to it to give me a little boost during the day. 225 and dropping.
Tesla's tanking right now, and I'm okay with that.
Tesla is a meme stock. It is one of the most wildly overinflated stocks.
Tesla stock is way down. Please don't ever vandalize Tesla vehicles. And so
they're taking to the streets or the parking lots.
Tonight, the FBI and ATF now investigating multiple cases of possible arson.
Oh, you guys like petty acts of domestic terrorism, huh?
Camp Bondi piece is very disturbing to me. To hear her throwing around words like terrorist.
Is it appropriate to increase penalties? No, it's not.
Same thing with Pam Bondi. She's, just stop that. It's a masquerade. This is just ridiculous.
Do you believe that?
There's dozens and dozens and dozens of examples of that sort of character assassination type move. And the right's not immune to this, by the way, because there was a backlash and a reaction, right? They were going to go after all the Tesla terrorists and so on. We got no pipe bomber from January 6th. The cocaine in the White House, for whatever reason, that was a big deal for Dan Bongino. That also hasn't been solved. Dobbs leak, that was the other thing Bongino talked about. That cutesy time is not over, is it? It's not. It's just not. But the original speculation, which came out from the ATF, that there was some sort of transgender ideology behind this shooting, that there was going to be a furry connection, it came out over the weekend. Charlie Kirk's assassination suspect had a furry fixation, and his trans boyfriend proclaimed support for the Biden administration on social media. So we're just perfectly divided on that. They got it. They got it all set up. Let me read this story here real quickly, and then I'm going to play you Fox News breaking it. I think it's relevant. Alleged Charlie Kirk assassin Tyler Robinson appears to have a fixation on furries, and he had a live-in transgender boyfriend espoused support for Joe Biden and joked about being mentally ill, according to social media post linked to the pair. Guy's name is Lance Twig, an aspiring pro gamer. If that's not the other cancer, pro gamers. Appeared to have made comments in a 2022 Reddit post stating we're riding with Biden on this glorious subreddit. That's not that big of a deal. Plenty of people have said that. Family appears to be conservative Christians based in Utah and is supposedly transitioning from male to female in a relationship with 22-year-old Robinson. So I would say that indicates that the man was gay, a man who's attracted to another man. That's a homosexual impulse. This transgender thought that you could switch from one to another is pretty wild. It continues to be one of the dumbest things that we're living in. I will show you that NBC News reported on it, and they referred to, oh God, I didn't grab that article. There was an article that I read from NBC that indicated that the governor misgendered this person. And so they were very incensed that because he's decided to identify himself as a woman, the boyfriend who's going through some sort of thing and is always pictured wearing, like, the only things we see are like wearing some sort of a costume. That person was misgendered. So that was the real crime here. Here's Fox News breaking it exciting. This is why we think this is probably credible, only because they would risk too much by not double checking and getting this on good information.
A Fox News alert. FBI sources tell Fox News Digital that the man charged with assassinating Charlie Kirk was living with a transgender partner. Bureau officials confirmed that Tyler Robinson was in a romantic relationship with someone transitioning from male to female. They say that individual is fully cooperating with their investigation, claims to have had no idea of Robinson's plans, and is not currently accused of any criminal activity.
Okay. So let's go down the list here because this is what happened last week. And I think that this is going to prove some things that I've been kind of talking about for a little while here. In no particular order. Let's start with this story. This is from Ryan Riley. I know Ryan Riley, so full disclosure, I've talked with him. He and I were discussing Kash Patel's dinner reservation, which came out on Friday afternoon, I believe. FBI Director Kash Patel is criticized for his actions and posts during the Charlie Kirk shooting investigation. FBI leaders' decisions to dine at an exclusive restaurant hours after the assassination and to criticize Utah officials raises questions about his leadership, current and former officials say. Now, Fox News was just citing somebody at Fox Digital. That was Brooke Singman. Brooke Singman is a preferred outlet in many leaks of Dan Bongino's preferred talking points. So I can't say definitively that that's where she got her information, but her sources say is most likely Dan Bongino in my estimation. That's what I believe happened there. And so Dan was getting out what he wanted to get out. Now, it's been more or less substantiated by other people as well that this is the case, that this person, Lance Twiggs, is that a real name even? Is that an alias? Lance Twiggs is supposedly a male, dresses up like a female, and also apparently wears fur costumes. This story goes on. FBI Director Kash Patel's activities during the investigation of conservative activist Charlie Kirk's assassination raised questions about his decision-making during the crisis. 4 former FBI officials and 2 administration officials have told NBC News. This is where it's going to get interesting because it's always fine for the left to go after one. We expect Ryan Riley to attack the FBI when Trump's in charge. We expect him to go after Bongino and Patel. It's not surprising to me. From the shooting Wednesday to the suspect's arrest on Friday, Patel took steps that gave pause to some federal and local law enforcement officials and raised questions about his judgment, the sources say. Several spoke on condition of anonymity because they're not authorized to speak publicly and they have fear of retaliation from the Trump administration. This fear of retaliation is a real thing. Hold on to that for a second. That is actually kind of problematic, I think. The actions range from when he was on the evening of the assassination, he was grandstanding about his own role in the arrest after they arrested the subject. You have other people that are former administrators like Chris O'Leary, former counterterrorism official, said that he's got zero leadership experience and capabilities. Okay, fine. The White House supposedly defended it. One of the interesting things was he was at this place called RAO, R-A-O. Now, I knew about this on Friday, but I knew about it on Thursday night, actually. But we couldn't talk about it because we hadn't substantiated it. And then by Friday afternoon, it sounds like it was substantiated that that's where he was. This place, RAO, is a exclusive restaurant in New York City. They have 10 tables, apparently. It's $100+ a plate. But it's not that it's $100+ a plate, and I'm sure that it costs way more than that to eat there. It's that you can't get in unless you know somebody that invites you to be there. So God forbid he miss his dinner reservation there. Now, here's the real answer of what should have happened, because this is super simple. People said a man's got to eat. Yeah, he does. A man's got to meet with people. A man's got to hold up to his obligations. That's fine. If you're friends with someone who is killed, contrary to what you see on television, you're not allowed to investigate that. And for those of you who are confused or troubled or have beliefs that are not reality, the FBI director and the FBI deputy director have zero investigative role. They are not investigators. That's not what they do. They are administrators. They are managers. Their job is to handle the business and the execution of strategy, not to do the operational work of an agency, period. The CEO does not go and get involved in individual sales to a customer. They don't even manage an individual store. The CEO of a large company looks down and says, here's the strategy, here's the vision, here's the way that we're going to implement it, go out and do forth. And then the people that are his subordinates go out and handle regions. And then those regional managers go and handle individual store managers. And the individual store managers go and handle the individual employees. Usually they're actually handling shift managers, and the shift managers handle the employees on that shift, right? You don't get to step out as an FBI director and act like you are somehow going to walk the scene and add value to the people who actually do the work of investigation, and some of them have decades of experience in it. And I know that because I actually know some people that were in there in Utah. It's really silly to act like they are doing something that they are not. The right answer by FBI policy and by all standard law enforcement policy is if you have any vested interest or connection to a victim, to the subject of the investigation, to anything that is emotionally connected to you, your first answer is recuse yourself. You recuse yourself from the investigation and you delegate the authority and the power to someone that's appropriate at a lower level. Now, normally that would go to the deputy director who could make, let's say, calls for resources and things. But the deputy director also knew Charlie Kirk. So the right answer would be Kash Patel would say, Charlie Kirk is a friend, was a friend. I'm emotionally invested in this. And so I will be delegating it to our number 3. We're going to give it to William Rivers, who is our associate deputy director. And he has all my, both my faith and my all the competencies to handle this. And he's been authorized to give whatever resources local law enforcement needs. This is not about us. That would be the right answer. That's what a serious person would have done. Recuse yourself and step away. Do not make it about yourself. That's not what we saw. We saw the Valhalla thing for a avowed Christian coming from a Hindu. Very illogical. We saw over and over again Fox News talking about the bold strategy of releasing a photograph of someone that law enforcement was working for, also known as the default standard operating position in a manhunt. If you want to find someone and you want the public's help, you put out a picture. Kash Patel spent all of the weekend arguing that what he did was brilliant and nobody was on board with it, and he had to beat them into it when the FBI didn't own the surveillance pictures, didn't gather the surveillance pictures, and didn't really have a real strong nexus to that investigation. I don't know how you would make that the case. You have to have a federal crime. Shooting somebody is not a federal crime. There's a small possibility you start getting because there's a gun, you have interstate commerce, so they come in with that, or you start talking about ideology, but that wasn't always obvious. The investigation should have been handled by DPS in Utah or by the state police or even by the campus police, for all I know, depending on how jurisdictions work out, which is probably a state entity. It's just desperate. And so because of that, we get this kind of nonsense. Is that Fox and Friends? Let me see if I've got a couple of different little pieces here. I went and grabbed something. That's why I started late. I had to go grab some clips for you guys. Let's start with the overreach end of it. I'm actually not going to start with Patel. I'm going to start with Stephen Miller, who generally speaking, I really like. I like the way that he's aggressive. This is the wrong answer. And I'm going to show you why it's the wrong answer. Because everything about what Stephen Miller is saying is not what law enforcement is supposed to do. It's supposed to be apolitical. It's supposed to be disinterested. And it doesn't go looking at people and then find a crime. He's just describing what we called weaponized government for the last 4 years under the Biden administration. Tell me that I'm wrong here.
And we are going to do that under President Trump's leadership. I don't care how. It could be a RICO charge, a conspiracy charge, conspiracy against the United States, insurrection. But we are going to do what it takes to dismantle the organizations and the entities that are fomenting riots, that are doxing, that are trying to inspire terrorism, and that are committing acts of wanton violence. It has to stop. And my message is to all of the domestic terrorists in this country spreading this evil hate. You want us to live in fear? We will not live in fear, but you will live in exile. Because the power of law enforcement under President Trump's leadership will be used to find you, will be used to take away your money, take away your power, and if you've broken the law, to take away your freedom, Sean.
That's not okay. That's just not an okay thing to say. That's not what we do in America. We don't say that we're going to identify who you are and then go figure out what crime you've committed. That's the whole reason why I have a public platform in the first place, folks, just so you know. That was a really, really bad take by Stephen Miller. We don't all hit it right, and especially when we're emotional. That's why you recuse yourself and you step away. I'm going to do a Spotify ad right here. So if you guys are listening online, we'll actually do some visual cues so you guys can see it. But there, Spotify, play some canned ads. Here's one, potentially if you're listening somewhere else. Let's do a quick little piece on Patel's coming out and talking about it. He went out and made all these claims, and I've got, okay, well, let me just do this too. How about this? Defending Kash Patel from himself. I don't usually go to the conservative treehouse, mostly because I don't like people who write anonymously, and I don't take them nearly as serious because I don't know who they are. I don't know what their agenda is. This is someone writes under the name Sundance. I know a lot of you guys like this. I know Dinesh D'Souza has promoted it. I've seen other people on True Social promote it. It just feels clickbaity to me. But this is an example of somebody that I would say is on the go with the flow right, the MAGA agenda right. Defending Kash Patel from himself is the headline that came out yesterday on Sunday. Many people were thrilled with the nomination, eventual confirmation of Kash Patel to be FBI director. However, after decades of researching political weaponization of the FBI and its known capabilities, and the known capabilities of this nominee, we were not part of the thrilled group. I don't know who we is. That's the royal we, I guess, of whatever this collective is, or Sundance. The non-pretenders looked at the challenge, the contrast of the scope of work, the skill set of the person elected, and warned that there were reasons to be apprehensive instead of optimistic. Goes on to basically say that Kash Patel may have never been up to the job, and all he's doing is sort of living this life of swanky reservations and trying to be a bro and go to cool places, and that resulted in the inevitable embarrassment. I think we can actually pull this over here. Let's see here. I'm going to show you the tweet that we had on Friday. This is the tweet. The subject for the horrific shooting today that took the life of Charlie Kirk is now in custody. Thank you to state and local law enforcement in Utah for your partnership. That's the day of. About an hour and a half later, you have the following. The subject in custody has been released after an interrogation by law enforcement. Our investigation continues and we'll continue to release information in the interest of transparency. This is not about transparency. This is about jumping to claim credit desperately in a thirsty manner. Anything to be able to say that we're the ones who did the great job. Now, I know people that were doing the interviews on the ground in Utah, several of them, and they've reached out to me and said things like, we were getting so much pressure after this first tweet because the people that we had in custody needed to be the answer, needed to be the subject, and not just a person of interest. And Patel and Bongino jumped the gun on this and then immediately went and stomped on the investigation. They actually hindered it and said, find something, otherwise you're going to be the problem. Now, senior agents say no, screw off. But junior agents, which is what we saw on January 6th, junior agents say, yes, sir, how high, when they are asked to jump like that. And that's really dangerous for our law enforcement agencies to get involved in. Let me show you another couple things here. This is from CNN. Not surprising, CNN's going to take a shot at Patel. Let's acknowledge where the biases exist. They said it's unacceptable. Inside growing concerns about Kash Patel's leadership of the FBI. He stepped up to a microphone at a news conference and wasted no time explaining what led to the capture of the suspect in Charlie Kirk's murder. This is what happens when you let good cops be cops, said Kash Patel, which is the dumbest statement because the FBI are not cops. Again, the operational unit of the FBI, 1811, criminal investigator, not police, investigator, long-term investigations, not cops. Cops are something else. Cops are people who do patrols, that go out there and respond to reactionary things. Long-term investigations are not it. The joke about the FBI is that if we need to get somebody into custody, we'll get them. And if they get away, we'll just get them another day because that's what we do, because we plan arrest operations. We don't need to do it today. It can be done whenever we want because that's what a long-term investigation means. You rarely have to scoop somebody up with exigent circumstances. And he made it all about himself for 6 minutes. He talked about the FBI leading the investigation, no clear why, that it coordinated with state and locals as though it were the primary agency, when in fact it shouldn't have been. Twice saying the decision to release the photos and the videos were his decision. Well, who gives a shit? That's a normal thing you do. You normally release photos when you want to find somebody and you want the public's help. Without the father doing the right thing, what do you have? It doesn't stop this guy from going out and trying to claim. And everything you see, even the weekend, over the weekend, what we heard was a report that Donald Trump said he's really proud of the FBI and Kash Patel, but not Donald Trump's own words. We didn't see that Truth Social post. Please let me know if I'm wrong on this, but I didn't see it. So all you're hearing is a guy who's desperate to hold on to his grip on a job that he's not doing good work. And I'm going to show you how I know that because Fox News is even reporting it. If CNN and NBC and CBS and the conservative treehouse and Fox News all agree on the same thing, ooh, that's deadly.
We flexed all resources the FBI had and surged multiple air assets as soon as this shooting occurred. We were cycling in agents, evidence response technicians, hostage rescue technicians, and special operators in and out of Utah, cycling evidence back and forth on these FBI planes as soon as we could so that there was no delay. And what we did, once I got there, along with the deputy on the ground around 5 p.m. local on September 11th, was walk the entire crime scene, including the foots the suspect himself took. And what we learned was there was evidence, DNA evidence that could be collected and had been collected, including a screwdriver that was found on the rooftop. Also, we went over to the scene in the wooded area where the firearm was discarded. and the firearm had a towel wrapped around it. It's important. I'll get back to that later. I even walked into the wooded area in the ravine, so I knew from my investigative experience what I could bring to the table and what decisions I needed to make. And having the support of President Trump and the full support of the White House was what we needed for these resources to happen. And I can report today that the DNA hits from the towel that was wrapped around the firearm and the DNA on the screwdriver are positively processed for the suspect in custody.
Holy moly. If Kash Patel wasn't there to look at the things that other people discovered, then how would they have ever found this guy? Oh, you released a freaking picture from a security camera and said this person looks like a person of interest. And then the dad turned him in because he confessed to the dad. And then he wanted to kill himself. Are we serious with that? Like, I'm going to upload that clip again. I'll put it over on Fox. He's the hero of the story. He just made himself the hero. And by the way, with the support and the faithfulness of Donald Trump, why do you all have to sycophantically say that? How about I got involved because I needed a PR win? Why did he fly out there? I'm told he flew out there with his entire PR team, including people that are not actually FBI employees. Do you guys even know that you're not allowed to have the FBI director and the deputy director on the same plane for obvious reasons? Because you have if you have to have people be safe, then you'd want to spread them out. You wouldn't have the deputy and the number one and the number two on the same plane. They don't do that. It's against FBI policy. Do you know that every single time that you put a not FBI director on the plane, you need permission from DOJ to do that? Do they go get that permission for an SESer to go out and fly on the plane? How about the private individuals that are special governmental employees? We're told that went with them. What are they doing? Why does the FBI director have an outside PR team? I'm asking questions that people should be asking about this clown. And he's acting like a clown, like a desperate, thirsty clown. Here's another sad thing. This is Fox News. They're kind of not sure what they're going to run with this. Miranda Devine, who I'm very fond of as far as the work she's done, she's kept an eye on my guys, and she's been very, very helpful for maintaining the stories of Zach Stoffstall. She's done great profiles on Steve Friend and so on. So Miranda, fantastic for the suspendables. But also, this is propaganda, what she's saying. Kash Patel cleaned house at the FBI with key firings. What do you mean? Which ones? The FBI has basically a complete fog of war over the middle management that we don't know. You don't know who they are, and I don't know who they are, and they didn't fire them. And the people that they're firing are basically being fired illegally, as a lawsuit now is alleging. Here's how I know that they're in deep trouble over there. Because Fox News ran this. Fox News Digital, the same one that went out there and said Kash Patel had a bold new strategy for releasing a photograph when everyone wanted to push against it. Okay, sure, whatever. They also ran this story. And this is a prominent story on Fox right now. Guys, knives are out for the embattled FBI director, despite Trump's support. Patel sought a meeting with Trump following the blunders as the new co-deputy goes on. Do you know what's crazy about this story? Because a lot of it has to do with who wrote it. It's Jackie Heinrich. She's married to, or she's engaged to be married to Brian Fitzpatrick. There's a whole nother story there, but he's a Republican congressman. She's 36, he's 51. She represents to me what I believe is an official statement from the machine, from the GOP machine. If the knives are out and we are talking about it publicly, it will not be surprising when we have to get rid of this guy, which is something I've been saying for a while, but I said it too early, obviously. On Monday, former Attorney General Andrew Bailey, once President Trump's top pick to lead the FBI. Oh, you remember when I told you that? Here's Fox News collaborating what I said. Once Trump's top pick for the FBI director position will be sworn in to a new power-sharing role, that means he starts, I guess, today. Is that what this says? Yeah. Today, the 15th, will be his swearing in. Bailey's installment comes at a perilous time for the FBI director, Kash Patel, whose leadership atop the nation's premier law enforcement is under fire, according to 10 sources in multiple federal offices granted anonymity so they could speak freely. The White House reasoning to create an unprecedented office for Bailey has not yet been explained, and it has left the FBI leadership confused, said two people with the FBI. The White House, Bondi, Todd Blanche, they have no confidence in Kash, said one source with ongoing knowledge. This is coming from Fox. This is not NBC. This is not Ryan Riley. This is not Dan Klaidman at CBS. Pam Bondi in particular can't stand him. Todd Blanche can't either. Bondi and Blanche both denied the characterization, just like Donald Trump went on and praised him. No reason to beat somebody up when you're about to fire them. The White House officials denied any plans to remove Kash Patel from his job, just like people who regularly run for president say that they have no interest in running for president, and then they do. The allies of President Trump And Kash Patel's harshest critics have begun circulating the word about contingency plans for an ouster that are forming. They're also hopeful that his successor, Andrew Bailey, made clear that he would not leave his post at Missouri AG or abandon his aspirations to run for state governor. He's previously said things that he wasn't going to leave those jobs, and sure he did. Why did he leave? Again, name the last 5 FBI deputy directors. Name the last co-deputy director. There is none. Quite interesting. Multiple sources close to Trump acknowledged the president was not thrilled with the past performance of Kash Patel, including the public feud with AG Bondi over the Epstein cases. One official involved in personnel decisions framed Kash Patel's botched communications during the manhunt for Charlie Kirk's assassin as something Kash Patel would likely wish he could do differently if he could do it all over again. Donald Trump did not call for any action to be taken, said the person. But people are looking at a purported off-ramp. The knives are out. We haven't heard a lot from Dan Bongino either. He flew out there and just kept his mouth shut. Kind of interesting. Also interesting, Kash Patel went on Fox and Friends this morning touting shocking information. This is shocking new information. Are you guys ready? Hold your horses. Here it comes.
But we've learned some shocking things when we spoke to his family and friends as well.
You want to share them? Those shocking things?
Sure. And my job as FBI director is not to speak to motive, is to speak to the facts. And that's what I'm going to do. His family has collectively told investigators that he subscribed to left-wing ideology, and even more so in these last couple of years. And he had a text message exchange, he the suspect, with another individual, in which he claimed that he had an opportunity to take out Charlie Kirk, and he was going to do it because of his hatred for what Charlie stood for. Those are factually accurate investigatory findings by the FBI that we've handed over to the local authorities and the federal authorities to make their prosecutorial decisions. But I believe in this instance of such public importance, the public has a right to know. And I've told you I'm committed to transparency, and that's what I'm doing here today.
What are you talking about? The FBI discovered that? Did they? Again, the guy was turned in by his dad. What did you have to do with that? Nothing. Who was resisting you and saying that you couldn't release a photograph, which people do all the time? Boston Marathon bombing. 3 days after the bombing, they released the pictures when they had positively identified who they believe was involved. Ask the public for help. Why do you do that? Was there danger to the public when they said the person was in custody and they weren't? Probably. People do all kinds of crazy things when they think they're being hunted. And the public stops looking when they're told that somebody's in custody, don't they? What are we talking about here? This is from a day ago. So this is shocking information. Again, this is shocking information, but this is the governor of Utah talking about it. He went on Meet the Press, talked about the romantic relationship, who's cooperating with authorities. What we've learned specifically is that this person did not have any knowledge, was shocked when they found out. Really? They were shocked? You live with somebody and you didn't know they were going to go kill someone? You have text messages back and forth about a rifle and some other things that we heard about? None of this stuff actually lines up on that story. Now, you could be a cooperating witness and you can get some leniency because you're helping law enforcement piece together what the hell happened. But I don't believe that for a second. It's weak and it's bad and it's desperate is what it looks like to me. Hence, you've got Fox News talking about it. Again, if CNN, it's unacceptable. If the conservative treehouse defending Kash Patel from himself and his own bad decisions. If Fox News, the knives are out. If this is where we're going, and this is what everyone's talking about, Kash Patel criticized for his investigation work and the things that happened on, if this is not the nail in the coffin, then what should have happened on, or what did happen on September the 10th should be. And it looks like this. FBI Director Kash Patel had to fire agents to keep his job. This is CNN reporting. Lawsuit accuses. That's Brian Driscoll. He was the acting director of the FBI. He was the number one. He was the FBI director's predecessor and chosen by the Trump administration. And he was fired last month. He was fired because he wouldn't fire somebody else that the FBI could not legally fire. And he stated it as much. I would probably disagree with things that Brian Driscoll has to say, but I don't disagree with the type of character of a leader who says, you can't fire that guy. We have rules. That's the whole point of what we do here. I don't know that he's political. I don't know that he has any political ideology that is against me. What I found is he was a former HRT guy. A lot of the HRT guys are pretty conservative Christian dudes. Doesn't mean they won't do bad things. Doesn't mean that they won't get sent in to do missions where they cover for each other or maybe they act in ways that are unlawful. But you can't fire people without actual authority to do so. And this is what the claim is in that lawsuit. So this is an allegation the lawsuit makes, is that the authority to fire a federal employee under Article 2 cannot be delegated to the FBI director, that it exists in the office of the president, and by Kash Patel claiming it and some of his own statements, because he was dumb enough to talk to these men, trying to make them friends, he basically said, if we don't fire these people that I want to fire or that we have to fire, then I will be fired. Kash Patel had to fire the agents that I brought up on August the 4th in a large, widely read tweet, which is also coded in the lawsuit. If they didn't do what they were told, then he says he was going to be fired. Do you know how many people are at risk of being fired if they're doing a good job because they just don't agree with one decision? Kash Patel also testified under oath that he would be independent and that nobody would be fired in political retaliation. Did we believe him? Probably not. Is that problematic if you go out and lie under oath? Oh yeah, it is. In America, and he's going to be facing a pre-scheduled hearing in front of Congress, and I guarantee you he's going to have to eat a ton of questions and allegations that are made in this lawsuit. How is that guy not cooked at this point? It is a bigger problem because what we should have had was a steady hand on the helm, steering America away. If you want to recapture the culture, if you want to go and do the right thing in this country, it's de-weaponize law enforcement, it's de-weaponize government, it's de-escalate the crisis that we saw where these people look like they had some sort of political agenda. You take that away. You take away resources from the FBI, and we heard the same FBI director talking about we needed more resources. This is one of the other guys that he got rid of, a guy named Michael Feinberg, who was allegedly friends with Peter Strzok. Again, you don't make people go away in the FBI. The answer is you exile them. This is what Hoover did. This goes all the way back to Hoover's time. You give them a post that nobody wants and wait for them to retire where they cannot bother anybody. Then you're good. Then there's no lawsuits. Then it's like, thanks for playing. You can quit on your own time. You're needed in Fairbanks, Alaska. You're needed in Juneau. You're needed in Guam. You're needed in Puerto Rico, in the interior of the island. Go investigate federal crimes in your neighborhood. Piss off. That's what you do in the FBI if you want to get rid of somebody. They broke the book when they went after me and the other suspendables. And Patel is using the same book. And it's dumb. He's actually using it dumber than they did. At least they just suspended us forever and made us, not have a paycheck. He's actually terminating them in word. And it's going to come back and bite him. I think they'll win their lawsuits, and I think they'll win big. Here's Feinberg saying, you need to give the FBI more resources. How is this any different than what Patel says? They all want to add more resources to this animal that is running itself. There's a black hole of middle management that he has no visibility into, and they'll do whatever they want. They're going to make him look like a fool, and they've already done it.
When you are moving that amount of people and you are not getting an increase in your budget or in your personnel numbers, by definition, things are going to fall through the cracks. And when that's combined with a Department of Justice-wide deprioritization of the domestic terrorism mission, this is what happens. Agents aren't out there recruiting sources. They're not maintaining tripwires. They're not able to keep their ear to the ground about what's happening among extremist movements. And as a result, the extremists have more latitude to do things that harm our society.
Absolutely nonsense. If they had more budget, they would have hired more people to look into parents at school board meetings. They would have gone after more Catholic churches. They would have done more of what the FBI does. The FBI is terrible at pre-crime. What they're really good at doing is setting people up for crimes, which we've seen over and over again, aka the playbook, aka the police state movie. You guys can go look. There's examples on the left and the right, by the way. Wherever the money is, that's where the FBI will go and investigate. So we know that's true. If you gave the FBI more resources, it would be more people doing the FBI thing. How do you know? I know because only a few people have ever spoken out, and when they do, they get unilaterally crushed. By the way, we had FBI whistleblowers that came forward that were supposedly made whole by Kash Patel and his organization. They have not been paid. They have not been reinstated. They have not been given their health benefits. They didn't get the back pay money, and they haven't been introduced back in. They have no badge, no gun, no CAC card. They are not back on duty. They have no SAX badge, rather. They bought their silence for $0 and continue to use the weaponization against them and drag their feet and delay. They've only got a couple more days to make good on their deal. More FBI means more FBI stuff, not the new thing. And Feinberg is saying exactly what you'd expect the FBI to do. They've proven that they're shitty at pre-crime. They do a terrible job. The FBI cannot prevent anything and doesn't prevent anything unless they're actually involved in the planning of that thing. I will definitively say that based on like 3 years of every single high-profile counterterrorism investigation I saw, they were all essentially set up jobs by the FBI. That's it. There's almost no argument against it. And the reason that you know that is because when the FBI celebrates their wins, you go and look, and there's always an undercover. There's always a confidential human source. There's always somebody that's prodding along the plot, waiting for long enough that they can get enough of a big bang out of it. And then they go and they tell everybody, look how we saved the day. Yeah, forget the fact that we set up the bad thing in the first place. Forget the fact that we encouraged the guy to do the thing. I would not be surprised to find that people in Discord channels or trans Tifa or trans Antifa types are out there being radicalized, including by people who are involved in federal law enforcement reporting. That is a very high probability. But generally speaking, they tend to focus these days on right-wing ideology, and that's because Mueller and Comey and Wray all had a very specific group of people that they went after to recruit. Personnel is policy. Holy crap, I feel like I've heard that before. Personnel is policy. If you go after, this is the ongoing supposition of the Kyle Seraphin Show, if you recruit people from high academic backgrounds, then you're going to get people from high academic backgrounds filling the ranks of your employees. And academia is almost exclusively populated by people on the hard left right now, with very, very few exceptions. If you minimalize the recruiting of law enforcement and military experienced people, it used to be like 50, 60, 70%. And it's gone down where it's less than 30%, I would say now. If the majority of people are coming out of law schools and graduate programs and national security things, and they're former government workers or they're former FBI employees who got really good grades, got hired on a diversity program, and then now they have a clearance, so it's super easy to onboard them as FBI agents, you're going to get leftists running the FBI. And for the last 2 decades, they've done that. They've brought in more and more of those people, and they populate the entire ranks of middle management from GS-15 up to whatever the SES levels are, the assistant director's level. That's who runs the FBI, not the director. And the director is making a fool of himself. Why is that relevant to the culture war? It's relevant because if we're going to have a cultural crusade, we cannot be distracted by nonsense where the FBI director makes himself part of the story. And it's trending on every single major news outlet: CBS, ABC, NBC, CNN, Fox News, every conservative outlet too. They're all talking about the blunders, the mix-up, and the thirsty desperation of the FBI director. All of them are. There are a dozen articles that I saved over the weekend before I logged off for all of yesterday. There's probably even more than that. And reputable people who, whether you like them or not, Adam Goldman has good sourcing in the FBI. Why? Because a bunch of leftists work in the FBI, and so they talk to the New York Times. It turns out that if you even try to spin it, and you get Brooke Singman to take on the position that the senior FBI executives want to do, the Dan Bongino types, they're like whispering in her ear, this is good info, and she runs a story on it. Kash Patel had a bold strategy. The next thing you have is Jackie Heinrich putting out knives out for FBI Director Kash Patel. Because the establishment pushed back and said, nope, he's junk. He's going to have a really difficult hearing. I'll probably live stream it because it'll be interesting to see what they ask. He blew it. It was such a golden opportunity to grab it. It would have been so easy to have the right people fix this FBI, and they blew it. And I am not celebrating that. It scares the crap out of me. I am far more worried about this FBI because this FBI director and girlfriend have decided to come after me in lawfare. And by the way, that's mentioned in the lawsuit by these 3 guys, that Kash Patel was essentially on duty requesting FBI senior personnel to personally sue me, yours truly, in a lawsuit. And so they've loaded up a gun to ask that question. How many people did he ask to sue me? And why? And what did he think the case was? Because if you remember, my coverage of Steve Jensen was what his job was, what those responsibilities were, and what he said in sworn statements. There's nothing defamatory about the actual truth of what you did. Isn't that something? And then we also covered the meta coverage of how Julie Kelly was falling all over herself to do it. I think a couple of people have had really good takes, and then we're going to get into the Elon thing and briefly. Like the Elon thing is almost the smallest piece of it. All of this is about the cultural crusade to me. And also the distraction from the actual purpose. If we're going to have Charlie's crusade, if we're going to have a cultural crusade to bring back the West, then we need to have people get the hell out of the way that are not part of it. And they can go to Valhalla or wherever the hell it is that they go when they think that that's what it's about. Stephen A. Smith is speaking pretty rationally as well. We're finding that the kind of classical liberals are going like, wait a minute. I also am not represented by this hatred. I think that an American party that is post-partisan needs to be developed. And maybe that's what Elon Musk's America Party looks like. It's like, how about just America from 50 years ago? Basic values, Christian ideology, You don't have to be Christian to be protected. You can still be a dissenting minority voice, but you don't get to go and tell us what we're going to do or not do. And assimilation. There needs to be homogeneity of what it is to be American, which means come here and speak English, come here and pick up the dominant culture. If you want to do like your own spice because you like curry and that's where you come from, or if you want to come here and you want to have different types of music, you want to bring Afro-Caribbean music to the thing, awesome. Love the music. Thanks for bringing it in. But this is America. And there are certain things that are non-negotiable, and you don't get to stop us from doing those. That's the right answer. Stephen A. Smith, making a lot of sense to me.
I've seen a lot of things growing up in the streets of Hollis, Queens, New York City. I've seen people dead and what have you. What I've never seen is somebody talking to an audience of people with their kids right in front of them and their wife right in front of them, and all of a sudden their body jolts before completely collapsing in a lifeless fashion and blood come gushing out the left side of their neck. I've never seen anything like that. And for people to speak about it in a way that's dismissive or to point to some of the things that he may have said that antagonized and agitated somebody else, it's inexcusable for us to even have those kind of thoughts at that particular moment in time. There are people in our industry who would disagree with me. I don't give a damn about what they have to say in that.
That's right. We don't give a damn what they have to say. We're being distracted because of stuff like this. Listen, only the British press was asking this, from what I can tell. This is Sky News. I guess maybe that's Australian press. This is the only people that are willing to go out and ask this question of Kash Patel as he's walking off. Like, hey, man, did you cause problems? We're not even seeing that as like from the left or the right, like until there's a groundswell. Again, there's things that are distracting, and then there's what Stephen A. Curry is talking about, which is correct. Is it Curry or Smith? Yeah, I'm off track on that one. I'll bring it back up in a second. Listen, this is a foreign news reporter who has to hold our FBI director accountable as he walks away from a press conference.
Mr. Patel, did you endanger public safety when you said the killer was in custody? Mr. Patel, did you misrepresent the investigation?
Just nothing. Ghosting. By the way, okay, yeah, not Stephen Curry. One of you guys in the chat put the word Curry. Stephen A. Smith. I was on it the first time around. That's the stuff we should be talking about. And he said there are people in our industry. What's the industry? Entertainment, news, etc. There are people that are trying to make that push, that are trying to send forward a bunch of hatred and normalize it and make it sound like it was a justifiable thing that happened. Here's Don Lemon. Now he's relegated to being an on-the-street guy who does TikToks. I'm sure there's plenty of money in it. Asking someone who represents the assassination culture, and then I'm going to show you the right answer because there are more and more people that are actually getting to the right answer. Again, that cultural crusade, it's going to have a lot more people that are left of center that are going to be more likely to be sympathetic to it than most people probably think. It is, I think, still the majority of America, even if it's only the 60%, and that needs to grow back up. All right, here's something horrible from an on-the-street interview.
Do you know Charlie Kirk?
Yeah, I do.
And what do you think of what happened to him?
You know, sometimes revenge is a dish best served cold. I hate to celebrate someone's death, but when you talk about guns' rights and you talk about how much the Second Amendment matters to you and then it impacts you, like, what do you expect, you know? Sympathies to his family, but this is why we need gun control.
One of my friends said on social media, he died in a world that he wanted.
Yeah, he said it himself, right? There's a whole quote that's been floating around about like sacrifices were made for the Second Amendment to still exist or something along those lines, right? It's an ad-lib, but yeah, this is what happens. You reap what you sow, and
got it.
You know, it's sad that someone died, but also, hey, you know?
Hey, you know, you were wearing a shirt that said freedom. You were having a public discourse with people who disagreed with you. So that's what you reap and that's what you sow. Disgusting. It comes from people like this. Again, what Stephen A. Smith say? He's saying there's a lot of people in our industry that say this kind of stuff. This is the push. This is where the fight should be. It should not be focused on an FBI director who injected himself into it that didn't need to. I saw the same thing from Kristi Noem. I'm not going to play her clip, but I have it. And she was like, Charlie texted me about border security because that's what I do. Maybe he did, maybe he didn't. You didn't show the text. How about get yourself out of it and just say we lost somebody who's a father and a husband and who was peacefully doing what Americans are supposed to do. And stop making it about yourself. I saw James O'Keefe release multiple videos too. This is what I was doing. I was teaching a class. Here's my fake reaction to it that I went and staged. It's my belief that he staged that because he stages a bunch of other stuff too. Everybody took an immediate moment to say, how do I promote myself on somebody's death that I knew? Absolutely disgusting. When we talk about grifting culture, that's what it looks like. It's nauseating. It could be uglier. I don't know what's uglier. Profiting or attempting to profit or push your message because your friend died or someone that was an acquaintance of you died, or just being an outright awful human being like this is Jameel Hill.
The reason he was labeled a white supremacist is because he believed in the superiority of white people, which is why he said that he would be concerned if he saw a black pilot, which is why he said that he questioned the brain processing of brilliant minds such as Joy Ann Reid and Ketanji Brown Jackson, because he ultimately believed in the superiority of white people. So I don't think I'm being insensitive by bringing that up. And the only reason I feel like I even need to bring that up is because of the counter narrative that is establishing itself. And that's the problem with history and the problem with receipts is that you can't erase the receipts. You can't, I learned this a long time ago, and I'm sure you guys have heard this before, is that people don't remember what you do, although a lot of times they do, but more importantly, they remember how you made them feel.
That is a great, great point. They remember how you made them feel when they took a little snippet, a little soundbite, and you say things that he did not say, because the statement about a black pilot was, isn't it awful that in 2025, because of DEI hiring, because of this insane instinct to promote people based on race and not on competency, that we now look at people who might be hyper competent and super capable, but because they also fit the paradigm of people that were promoted who didn't have that, we are now concerned whether or not they actually have that competency. There was a time when you could look at a pilot and you would go, that's the best person for the job. That's why he was hired. Or she was hired. She must be superior at this skill set. And then you've seen stupid corporate, montages of saying we're putting women in the air and we don't even need a man. And you're going, oh my God, what airline is that? I want to fly on anything. I'm going to drive. I'm not going to fly. Thank you. We look at competency and say, well, if you have made race a competency, then I will now be concerned about it. You have actually cheapened the people that do awesome work. I've said this. I have hyper competent friends. You might imagine that. I've got stud buddies who are special forces dudes just because they happen to have darker skin or lighter skin. I'll tell you this. If you find a guy in 2006 who's a Navy SEAL or a special forces operator who went through combat dive, it is historically not full of black guys. That's a fact. There are very few dark-skinned men that make it through there. You know who makes it through? Guys who spent their life around pools, water polo players, surfers, rugby players that also did water stuff, some swimmers. It is not common to find dark-skinned, like African-American black men in America becoming special forces divers, becoming special operations divers, whether it be SEALs or PJs or combat controllers or Marine Corps, MARSOC guys. It doesn't happen that often. It's rare. If you see them today, you're going to wonder, did they get an extra hand? And that is stealing from those men's accomplishments, right? It's theft. You've cheapened what they've done because of crap policies. So Charlie Kirk's point was, you've stolen from those pilots who earned the position and you've made regular people like me question whether or not they had competency. And she turned around and said it made her feel like it was racist because she had a preconceived notion. That's where the culture fight should be. It should not be that we're asking questions of like, what is our law enforcement doing? And are they just as weaponized as they were under Biden? And the answer might be yes. That's not where we need to be. That is a theft from this moment. I'm going to show you why I think, though, it's not a lost cause. And most importantly, I'm going to show you why I actually think there are far more people. You'll look at someone, look at this lady walk up, make your stereotypical prejudice decision, whatever that is. If you eyeball this lady, she's got big googly sunglasses, she's got dark hair, she's a black lady wearing a midriff, and she's kind of a little bit overweight, and she's showing off her belly, and she looks like she could be someone that would not agree with anything I have to say. And she answers this question from Don Lemon with grace and dignity and a commonality with probably everybody who's listening here. This may surprise you that I still think it is a majority of this country that are decent, even if we're outnumbered by loud asshole voices. That's the only way I can say it. Watch this. I think this is actually something that gives you hope.
What do you think would happen to Charlie Kirk?
It's just messed up. Totally messed up. You know, that was messed up. Like, nobody deserved that. He definitely didn't deserve that. He was a good guy.
You think he was a good guy?
I think he was.
You
only
think?
Kirk
Good morals.
Captain Kirk.
The what?
The only Kirk you recognize is Captain Kirk. I don't know Charlie Kirk. I don't know who that is.
You don't know who it is?
I don't know who that is.
I know who it was. Like, you know.
I only know about him.
All of us have flaws. I can't really tell you what to believe in or how to feel. Like, everybody's having a human experience. Like, why knock him for having this human experience or what he believe in?
Even though even though he says things that are anti-women, black, all that.
I can't judge him for that.
You can't.
I can't judge him for that. But I can use judgment. He didn't deserve that.
Right.
Yeah.
As a human being.
Yeah.
You are very spiritual.
You know, yeah.
No,
I can't go left. I can't go left with that.
No, you sound like, you mean left, going
yeah,
not left.
Because I'm humanity. Yeah. I'm humanity and left first.
No, I love that. So the first person I spoke to here didn't want to be on camera, and he said, I can't judge him because I'm not God. And so let him, whatever the reaction is, if the government wants to give him a state-like funeral, if they let him do it because God is the only judge. And
yeah, like nobody really can judge him.
Yeah.
And like I kind of like seen him before all of this happened, but I don't see whatever everybody else was seeing. Right. So, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, that's how you feel. It's nice to see you.
Hey, I'm trying to slander people here. That's what I'm trying to do. I'm Don Lemon. Here I am. She's a better person. And I think she's more common. I think that the sick people that you see on social media, the cancer that Spencer Cox talked about, I don't think they're common. Not as common. They're out there, no doubt. They might be even 55% of the left. That may be the case. But they're not the majority of people in this country. Even though they are a pretty big minority. So find those people. Because we can make common ground with that lady. Only God can judge him. Yeah, isn't that the right sentiment? Who would say otherwise? 10 years ago, could you imagine people going out and celebrating a political assassination? Horrible. Wouldn't happen. Nobody would be foolish enough to do it. And they all changed because Donald Trump was evil. So anyway, that's why Elon Musk needs to be canceled as well. So here's the final thought. This is coming from CNN. It's on ABC. There's a couple of other different articles talking about it. Billionaire Elon Musk on Saturday said that the United Kingdom needs to face, quote, revolutionary government change, speaking virtually at a, quote unquote, far-right anti-immigration protest. Let me read you the headline. Elon Musk says the UK needs revolutionary change of government in a speech to anti-migrant rally. Nobody's anti-migrant. We are anti-illegal immigration. We are anti-people coming in and settling and doing a colonization, reverse colonization, whatever you want to call it, great replacement. People are against having the prominent culture of their country replaced. Hence the need for a cultural crusade. But we're not taking back the Holy Lands. We don't need to retake the Holy Lands to protect the sites of historical importance and religious importance to Jews and Christians. We need to retake our cultural institutions that are still important to Jews and Christians, primarily Christians in this case. Western society has basically been overrun by whatever the horde is. The horde is not just Muslim people or migrants. It is people that are espousing radical leftism and things that are not the way that the society was developed. Elon Musk says this. There needs to be massive government reform in Britain, and the people need to be in charge, not some bureaucracy that doesn't care. We must have revolutionary government change. This really requires everyone to sort of marshal the people, to take charge, to reform the government, to make sure that you actually have a government that is for the people and by the people. Yeah, those are great words. He said civil war is inevitable. The question is it a hot war or is it a cultural crusade that we just take back those institutions, and how that gets done? One of the ways you do it is by capturing your children's minds. That's why homeschooling is so big right now. That's my take on that too. Here's another great picture. Again, the arguments were whether or not there were enough people there. They called it 110,000. 100,000 or more strong. I looked at the thing. It was miles of human beings that were wall to wall. It looked closer to 1 million, maybe more. Elon Musk said things like, violence is coming to you and either you fight back or you die. That's not wrong. We've already seen that in the last 2 weeks. Could happen on either side. But what fight back means and why you should censor him over that, they claimed that it was to sow discord and incite violence in the streets. That's not what he said. He said fight back or you die. And if this is a cultural battle, the fight back has to be seizing minds, seizing education. It can be as radical and revolutionary as somebody who's not been to church in 20 years going back to church for the first time. If you guys ever want to go back and see what it looks like, if you actually want to just step back in time, because you can do it right now, you can actually you can time travel. Every one of you can. Find a Latin Mass. If you are a Christian of any denomination, find a Latin Mass. Go sit in the back pew and listen to the Mass that all of Europe listened to during the time of the Crusades, before D-Day, before almost every great event that you've seen in Western civilization, where like freedom was the reason why, and where all of your history comes from. Even if you're Protestant, go sit in a Catholic Mass that does TLM, traditional Latin Mass. Go spend 90 minutes in the back pew and just listen. You will walk out and you will realize that you have walked back in time hundreds of years. It's still there. It's still something you can touch. It doesn't mean you have to convert to Catholicism, although many of my friends continue to do that. I think that showing up at church of any kind will be your gateway. If you guys want to see what the real powerful mission, if you want to see what the big howitzers look like, it's stepping back in time and doing the Latin Mass. It's one guy's take. I can't take my kids all the time. It's too much for them. It's pretty intense. It feels like a foreign thing for me, and I grew up Catholic, so you will not be alone in walking in there and looking around going like, I don't even know what's going on in this. You'll recognize the form of the Mass if you were raised in a Catholic household, but it'll still be a little bit foreign to you because basically most of the people that are my age, certainly everybody younger than me, this is not standard. Pretty wild. Give it a shot. That's a thought for you. I have something as a palate cleanse. I don't want to leave you without that. I'm also going to encourage you, if you want to support our program, subscribe. We crossed 13,000. We're adding about, close to 1,000 every single month watching over on YouTube. So God bless all of you over on YouTube. Thanks so much for joining us. Make sure you've hit the like before you leave. If you're watching on Rumble, same story. If you're watching on X, watch us on one of the other platforms. We actually get monetized if you want to help us out. It's the same stream, just helps out. And there's a pretty cool chat. We've got the best chat in the business on both sides, YouTube and Rumble. Awesome people. You can support us on locals by going to kyleserafin.com. Super easy to do. And if you want to share it with a friend, I would encourage you. It actually turns out to be one of our best monetized things. Costs you nothing, by the way. It's a free service over on Spotify. You don't even have to download the damn app. Go to Kyle Seraphin Show, the word, KyleSeraphinShow.com. That's how you send the Spotify app. You can do video or audio, super easy. You can go fast after we upload it. It's usually uploaded by about 11:30 on the Eastern Seaboard, 10:30 here locally. So go and check them out for sure. Let me give you a palate cleanse of some kind. This is a Canadian talking about what he sees in this country and what his fear was and what it wasn't. Again, this doesn't mean a hot war when we talk about a crusade. So here's one of our snow Mexican neighbors from the north. He's got a great mustache.
So I'm a Canadian in the US right now, and when Charlie's assassination happened, I genuinely thought, am I going to have to go home? Because this is the type of major event that you'd think could destabilize society. People hitting the streets, and maybe if it got real bad, maybe even a civil war. I think we all thought about it. But I genuinely remember it hitting me that day, no, we don't have to worry. Because it's the people that you have to worry about that are celebrating right now. And the people that are pissed off are supporters of Charlie, which means they have deeply strong morals and they have a God. So when you piss off the left, they get violent in the streets, and we've seen it, and don't act like we haven't. And when you piss off the right, evidently, they hold prayer vigils. Seriously, name one business that's had to board up their windows. Name one act of violence. There's been no looting, no maniacs in the streets. And it's not because we're not pissed off. It's because we're not the same. And this whole situation perfectly shows the true concern. And the media has convinced so many people that it's the radical right-wing extremists that you have to worry about. Okay, where are these people? What are they doing that's so dangerous? If I can be really honest, they're in some deep south small town, honestly minding their own business. Okay? These radicals on the left are out in society among us everywhere, and not even secretly celebrating the death of Charlie. Being so open about it. These people have no honor, no integrity, no shame, no morals. And honestly, can you really be that surprised? These are the same people who have no problems casually castrating children and unaliving their babies. These are the issues they care the most about. But if you want to keep believing CNN when they tell you that it's the right-wing lunatics that are the problem, I guess that's your choice. And I guess not everyone was meant to wake up and see the truth.
The truth. Not yours, not mine. It exists. It's outside of us. We're all trying to get to it. So anyway, thanks so much for joining the program here. God bless all of you that are listening. Please share the show. And I look forward to seeing you guys again. I hope this week is a little bit more tame than last week. Time will tell. This is a tumultuous moment. All right. See you again tomorrow.
Thanks for listening to The Kyle Seraphin Show, streamed live weekdays on rumble.com/Kyle Seraphin. Follow Kyle on Twitter, Truth Social, and Instagram at Kyle Seraphin.